Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyra and today I want to talk to you about Mercury. I thought it would be fun to sit down and talk to you about Mercury in honor of the fact that Mercury has ended its retrograde and is moving back through Taurus, and on June 13th, roughly depending on your time zone, it will be re-entering Gemini. Mercury stationed retrograde on May 10th. Again, all of these dates are dependent on your time zone. If you live 5 hours ahead of me in EST time, this date might be different. So just bear that in mind as we go through this. Mercury stationed retrograde in Gemini on May 10th. On June 3rd, it stationed direct in Taurus and started moving back. And as I said, on June 13th, it is re-entering Gemini. So a couple of things. One, technically the period of Mercury in Gemini began, depending on how you practice astrology, based on how I practice astrology, the period of Mercury in Gemini, the lessons it's bringing this Gemini season, began the very first time it entered Gemini. And that was the very end of April, April 30th. I'm just looking down at my honeycomb planner. That was on April 30th. And it carried on until May 10th when it stationed retrograde, as we said. It stationed direct in Taurus, just to recap, on June 3rd. And on June 13th, it re-enters Gemini, where it stays until July 5th, I believe. Yes, July 5th. All of this, again, dependent on time zones. And this whole period of time, Mercury is giving us opportunities to look at how we communicate certain things in our chart, because that is what Mercury rules. Mercury rules our communication. It rules how we think. Mercury is all about how we think and how we speak. Some signs that could be extra strongly influenced by Mercury are anyone who's got very prominent Gemini or prominent Virgo, because Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, especially if you are a Gemini or Virgo rising sign, because whatever your rising sign is, that gives you your entire chart ruler, and your chart ruler is, it kind of flavors everything. It's the captain, it steers your ship. There's lots of analogies you can use for this. So if you're a Virgo rising or a Gemini rising, Mercury is your chart ruler. So if you have very prominent Gemini or Virgo placements, especially rising signs, Mercury's actions can affect you much more strongly. And of course, if you have your Mercury in Gemini, you're going through your yearly Mercury return, which is when Mercury comes back to Gemini. The reason I didn't do this video earlier is because I did not have the idea. So we're doing it now in honor of Mercury re-entering Gemini. And I thought it would be fun to sit down to talk to you about Mercury and to tell you about what kinds of things you could be experiencing based on what house Gemini is in your chart. Because the thing with astrology is the planets, when we look at the planets in our chart, that's when we're looking at the energy. We're looking at what type of energy. Mercury is the planet of communication and wavelengths and thinking. So that's the energy we're looking at. We look at the sign Mercury is in, and we're looking at how that energy is manifesting, how it looks. So Mercury in Gemini looks like someone with a lot of ideas, because Gemini is very big on thinking. Gemini is the student. Mercury in Gemini can speak of the eternal student. It can speak of someone who is eternally curious, who has that thirst for knowledge, that thirst for learning. And then the house your Mercury is in tells you where it is showing up, or the house of whatever it is tells you where it is showing up. So we have the planet, which is the energy, the sign, which is how the energy manifests, and we have the house, which is where it manifests. So I thought I would talk you through the houses and what might be manifesting, what Mercury might be bringing to your life right now. We start off with our Gemini rising signs. These are our folks who have Gemini is the first house in their whole sign birth chart. Specifically, whole sign we're talking about here. Gemini in the first house brings us to the place of our identity, because the first house is all about the self. It is the house of self. It is the house of identity. So if you are a Gemini rising sign and Gemini is the first house in your birth chart, you might be thinking a lot right now about how you present to the world. Do you give off the impressions you want to give? How are you choosing to communicate yourself to the world? This could come about with things like name changes. Our names are how we communicate ourselves to the world. Our hair is how we present to the world. What we wear. It's all of these things that give the first impressions of who we are as a person. And Gemini in the first house, Mercury is bringing this attention to that spot. It's bringing us to that spot saying, are we communicating ourselves the way we want to? For our Taurus risings, they have Gemini in the second house. And the second house is all about the person's resources, both tangible and intangible. My second house is about my resources. Your second house is about your resources, etc., etc. And these resources can be our time, our energy, our money, our material goods. It's not just material goods. I want you to take that idea that the second house is just material goods, and I want you to throw it away, because it's not accurate. It's just like the suit of pentacles in the tarot. The pentacles in the second house, it's very much the same thing. It's not just about the material goods or the finances. It very much can be. We have other resources than just money and material things. That way of thinking is a result of being raised in a society that is heavily focused on capitalism and keeps colonizing and developing past the point of ridiculousness. In my opinion, that is. I don't really like our capitalist society. Anyway, so if you are a Taurus rising, Mercury is coming to you and is bringing your attention to how you think about and how you communicate your resources. Are you saying no when you're too tired? Are you giving yourselves boundaries to say, I don't have the energy, which is that resource, I don't have the energy to do these things that you want me to do? How full are you making your plate? And I'm talking about the metaphorical plate here. How full is it? Is it so full that you don't have enough energy, resource to do everything on it? If so, why are you saying yes to adding more things to it? These are the kinds of questions. Or are you being too stringent with your resources? Is Mercury could be easily talking to you saying like, yo, you keep saying no to things. When are you going to say yes? But it's about communicating and thinking. You could also be looking at, are you in this mindset that you don't have resources when perhaps you do have resources, but they're being used by things you don't want to use them? So it's all about this idea of how we communicate our resources and how we think about our resources. Are there areas in our life that we thought should take up a lot of our resources that maybe now we're realizing we don't actually want them to take up that much space and time and energy? This could also, of course, be about your physical space, because space itself is also a resource. And if you have a bunch of tarot decks and you have no time to use them all, that's two resources that are being overwhelmed by something. So this is a really good time for the Taurus risings to look at their resources and how they think about them. We're not so much talking about feeling, but how they think about them. If you look around your house and you can't think straight because it's so cluttered, that could be a sign of needing to address that. But Mercury is here in your second house to ask you, How are you communicating your resources? Are you doing an accurate job of communicating what resources you have available to you? For Aries rising signs, Gemini is your third house. And your third house is all about ideas and communication. It's also about siblings. So when we bring in ideas and communication from the house, and we bring in communicating and thinking from Mercury, it could be about communicating with your siblings. How's that going for you? Is it working? It could be, and it doesn't have to be like a biological sibling. If there's someone you grew up with who is like a sister to you, or like a brother to you, or like a sibling to you, it's just that feeling of that kind of a close relationship that doesn't feel like friendship, but it feels familial. How are you going about communicating to them? Is it going well? Is there things that you really want to fix about how you're talking with them? The third house is also the house of short distance travel. So are you fully processing and communicating to yourself your need for some space to get out of the house? And another thing is, with Mercury moving through the third house right now, you might really need to get out of the house and go for a walk around the block in order to be able to think clearly and communicate clearly. This is this other side of it. It's not necessarily just bringing attention to what's already there. Sometimes it brings a time period where for this time period, you have to change how you do this kind of thing, which is the communicating and the thinking, in order to move you through this time period. But so the third house, siblings, school, like early education. So are there gaps in your early education that you really want to fill? These are the kinds of questions you can be asking yourselves if you are a Taurus rising, and that you can work with for the rest of the time when Mercury is in Gemini. For our fourth house, we go to our Pisces rising signs. And our fourth house is the house of home, roots, ancestry. It is where we root down into the earth to be able to sprout up and grow and do all these things we want to do in life. So, what could we communicate about our fourth house? Are we unhappy with our home and not communicating that? It's just about this area of your life and how you're communicating or how you're thinking about that. If all you think when you're going home is, oh God, I just have all these chores to do, that's a Mercury fourth house thing. It's the weight. It's the mental load of the fourth house. Or you could also look at it as like, what is the message? What is being communicated to you or to others who come into your home? Is it communicating a safe and warm space? Is it communicating a clean and relaxing space? What message is being communicated to you by your home and the way you set it up? For example, I want my house to give a message to me that I am safe and that I am warm and that I am kind of encased in coziness. I like warm tones. I like earth tones. I like warm tones. I like lots of deep colors and dark browns. I like to look through my house and think and feel I am safe here, and I can root, I can dig in. This is where I am safe. I feel safe to root and dig in. For me, I want that to be warm and nurturing and cozy. But that's the kind of thing we're looking at. What is the message that your home space is communicating to you? Also, could be getting some messages from ancestors, right? Could be a really great time to look into or pick up again ancestor work. If you are a Pisces rising and for some reason you've just noticed this pattern that you like to do ancestor work during Gemini season, during spring into fall or spring into summer season, that could be why. It could be because you have Gemini in your fourth house. So Mercury comes into Gemini in the fourth house, and it's time for you to communicate with those ancestors. That could be. The fifth house brings us to our Aquarius rising, friends. And the fifth house is joy and pleasure. And this can be childlike joy and childlike pleasure. It could be adult joy and adult pleasure. It can also be about children. Because if you think about it, children are supposed to be the living embodiment of joy and of pleasure. So the fifth house is for them. This is a great time to look at how are you communicating with your kids, if you have any, with your grown kids, if you have any of those. How are you thinking about your kids? Are you looking at your kid and thinking they're being defiant when they're really trying to express themselves? Are you thinking that they don't like you as a mom or as a parent? Are you thinking that they don't like you as a parent when all the evidence is there telling you that they do? Anything like this. It is a great time to check in with how you're communicating with your children or your grown-ups. So that's the children. It's also, are you communicating your joy? Are you talking to people and telling people when you're having a good day? Sometimes people get into this really nasty habit, nasty towards themselves, of feeling like they can't express joy because there's so much suffering in the world, which really sucks, because suffering begets suffering and joy begets joy. It doesn't solve all of the issues that cause all of the things. It doesn't solve the external factors. Internally though, and in like our connected circle, just think about how happy it makes you when you hear a little kid giggling, just laughing their head off or smiling at you. Think about that nice warm feeling you felt. I hope you felt it. When you're walking down the street and someone just gives you a big, beautiful, bright smile. Joy begets joy. Are you holding yourself back from communicating your joy because you don't feel like that joy is allowed to be held because there's so much suffering in the world? Conversely, you could, of course, also be holding back communicating. You could be presenting as someone who is joyful when really internally you're struggling. Why? Communicate. Think about how we're communicating that. For the pleasure, are you in your grown interactions involving pleasure, are you communicating your needs and your wants? Are you listening to others communicating their needs and their wants? It's all about the thinking, all about the communication. Let me know at the end of this video if you're sick of that word, because that's just what it's about. How are you communicating and thinking about your joy and your pleasure and your children, if that's applicable for you? Which brings us to our sixth house and our Capricorn rising signs. And the sixth house is our physical body health and day-to-day living and routines and structures and that kind of stuff. So, are you physically in pain and not talking about it? Are you grinning and bearing and grunting through pain instead of communicating that you're in pain? I'm not saying to not grunt through, because we got to do what we got to do, and only you know your life. I don't know your life. I'm just saying, just because we have to maybe grunt through things and get through the pain doesn't mean we can't hold space for the fact that that's where we are. A lot of the time, we really need to hold this space for ourselves. We don't want to live in that space, because when we live in that space of I'm in pain and you're just thinking about being in pain all the time and you're just saying I'm in pain all the time, that's a hard space to be in. It's not good for anybody. And you'll see a lot of wonderful, really amazing people. And I say amazing because I get stuck in the space of thinking about my physical pain. So to me, this is a quality I wish to, a skill I wish to build. You'll meet amazing people that live with chronic pain, and then you'll see them going about their lives, and then you find out they've got chronic pain, and you're like, how do you do this? And they're like, and you're like, how do you do this? And you're still so happy, you have such joy, like you go about your day-to-day life, you seem to enjoy it. How? And they're like, well, I have no choice. I'm not going to live in the pain. I'm going to live, and I'm still going to honor the pain. And that's what the nuance of this is. How are you communicating about your physical health? And how are you thinking about it? Are you living in that headspace of pain? If so, I invite you to please seek any medical or mental health professional help that could help you. And I've been there. I live there a lot. For example, a classic example of this is I constantly will go, oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I'm so tired. It's me talking, communicating about my 6th house. And I'm just so tired. And then I reach a point where I realize by me saying I'm tired, I'm not allowing myself to experience anything else. My brain is stuck in the I'm tired, right? So, and if there's anything about your physical being that your brain is stuck in that mode, this could be a really good time to look at that. Like I said, you could seek support that you might need from medical or mental health care professionals. You could also do shadow work if that's your bag, whatever floats your boat. We're also looking at our routines. Are we clearly communicating what we need for our routines? Because this is all about communicating. Or do we need to reimagine? Because this is also about thinking. Do we need to reimagine what our day-to-day routines are? Are we realizing that our day-to-day routines are not working for our life? So do we need to reimagine it? And how are we communicating our boundaries about our day-to-day routines? Moving on to our Sagittarius risings, we come to the 7th house. And the 7th house is all about one-on-one relationships. It is any relationship interaction where it's one person and one other person talking. So it's you and someone else. It could be talking to a therapist. It could be talking to a doctor. It could be talking to your spouse. It could be, it's an interaction between yourself and one other individual. That is all of the things of the 7th house. 7th house. Yes, if we have a life partner, that person could end up representing a lot of the 7th house things in our life. They could end up being a representation of that, because that could be our main one-on-one relationship. Same with if you have any children in your house, or if you have grown children. Any relationship that is a one-on-one relationship that is of high importance and priority for you counts, and then all the other little interactions with people also count. For those who are polyamorous, it would kind of get, your polycule would kind of get split. So if you have 3 girlfriends, your relationship with each individual girlfriend is a separate 7th house thing. And then the relationship of your polycule as a whole would be more of an 11th house thing, which you'll hear a little bit about. So just so you know, it's individual one-on-one interactions. Me talking to you right now, I am talking to my camera, and you're going to be on your end listening to this. This is a one-on-one 7th house interaction as well. So the question is, with Mercury, how are we communicating in our relationships? How are we communicating about our relationships? How do we want to communicate about our relationships? How are we thinking about our relationships? How do we want to think about our relationships? So this is a really good time to think carefully about the words you use when speaking to your partner or your child or your teacher. It is a very, very, very good time to think, okay, here's what I think. Here's what I want to say. I'm going to try and make sure the two line up and match, because they don't often. And in fact, it's a really good time to learn about the balance of this, because often we can get stuck in our heads where we end up never communicating to our spouses, our partners, our teachers, our friends, or whoever it is, because we're so focused on trying to find the exact right thing to say, when in fact, sometimes the act of speaking and communicating with that person can help you find the words, right? So if there's things you need to communicate that you're really struggling with, or things that if you're just stuck in perfectionism about your communication with people, it's a really good time to address that. My spouse, I love her to death. It is like pulling teeth getting her to talk. She and my son too, in fact, they both will sit there and think about their words. I'll ask them a generic question, and they'll sit there and think, because they think I'm looking for specific words for them to talk to me. And I'm like, I'm not looking for specific words. I just want to hear your thoughts. I just want you to share your thoughts. So if you identify with them where you're just turning it over, trying to find the perfect sentence to convey your thoughts, then Mercury could be here to force you to blurt shit out, so that way you can learn that you can be safe and you can be okay to share your thoughts in a more raw, unedited version. And through the process of communicating with that person, with that 7th house individual, you can fine tune it and find the exact core of what it is you're thinking. And you can learn how to bring your thinking and your communication together, so that way the path is paved a bit better for better communication in your 7th house areas. So that could be what the kind of stuff you could be working through in this remainder of Gemini season. Next up, we have our Scorpio risings, and our Scorpio risings have a Gemini 8th house, and the 8th house is all about debt, taxes, death, other people's resources, both tangible and intangible. So it's the opposite of the 2nd house, where you were worried about yourself and your resources. It's the other person's. And also death, taxes, dying, the occult. Because of the death being a part of the 8th house, this is a time where you could be faced with communicating or thinking about grief. Recent grief, past grief, upcoming grief. Sometimes we know grief is coming before it gets to us. This is some of the topics that could be coming up. Also, if you've got debt, you could suddenly get a lot of phone calls from debt collectors. It's a good time to communicate about the debt. Or if you're just feeling very bogged down with the debt, it's a good time to find someone you could talk to about that. We're all about thinking and communicating. How do you think about your debt? How do you think about death? How do you think about debt? How do you think about the occult? How do you think about other people's resources? Do you have a partner whose resources directly influence you and affect you and your day-to-day living? Is there something in that area that you need to communicate to them? Right? Is there something like, is your partner responsible to pay bills, to pay a portion of the bills, and you always have to get the money late from them because they've gone shopping? Just as an example, that would be an 8th house Mercury communication. Whatever it is, that it can always also be the converse. Is your partner a bit too rigid with the resources, and you're upset because you really feel that it's unnecessary to be that strict on the resources? It's just looking at the 8th house. Is there anything about death, dying, debt, grief, Taxes. Do you need to talk to an accountant? Good time to do that. If you need to talk to an accountant, do that now. Once Mercury has re-entered Gemini, do that. It's a good time for it. Do you need to change how you think about taxes? And then the partner's resources or the other's resources, both tangible and intangible. This could also be business partner. What do you need to communicate about those things? And what are you thinking? What are the things in those categories that are weighing on your mind that you need to communicate in some way? That's always the core question. Whatever the house category is, what are the thoughts that are going through your mind that you need to communicate to figure out the thoughts? It could also be that your partner could have some thoughts to communicate to you that you need to listen to. That is a thing that happens. Same with the 7th house. It could be that the other person in the equation could have some things they need to communicate to us that we need to rethink about. Like if your partner comes up to you and suddenly says they don't like how you are using your resources, that they feel all the pressure of the resources is on them, that counts as both a 7th house communication and an 8th house communication. So anything like that too, those also count. The 9th house brings us to the house of spirit and study, and this would be our Libra rising signs. The 9th house is all about spirit and study. This is post-secondary education, it's further education, it is long distance travel, it is very spiritual. Traditionally, the 3rd house, which is opposite, was known as the house of goddess, and the 9th house is known as the house of God. Again, this is traditionally speaking. So, highly spiritual places. Is there something spiritually going on that you need to share? Is there something that has been happening for you that you can't stop thinking about, that you're so excited about? Share it. Tell us. We'd love to hear it. Make a YouTube video. Okay, you don't have to, but I would love a YouTube video. And if you do, let me know about it because I'd love to hear about it. Is there something you're studying that you're really excited about, that you really want to communicate? Now's a good time to do it. Is there something you want to be studying? Are you getting that itch to learn something new, learn something advanced for spirituality stuff, to try on new things, to change how you think about it? Now might be a time where suddenly you look around and your spiritual practice, if you have one built, and you're like, oh, I need to do something different. I have new ideas. I have new thoughts. And I want to communicate those new thoughts to the world. I want to send the energy of those new thoughts out into the world. Also, a really good time to make sure you're talking the house of spirit and study. It's a really good one. So what is it about spirituality and study or long distance travel? So do you feel a need that you need to go on a big adventure? Communicate that. What is it about the area of spirituality and study, post-secondary education? What is it that also you want to teach? What is it about those things that you think about, that you're thinking about a lot now, that you need to communicate? This is also another place where you could get some spiritual messaging going on. 10th house is the house of career and ambition and life's work. And this brings us to I'm going backwards in my head. This would be our Virgo risings. So, what is it that you want to do? Are you, in your work, are you communicating the messages you want to be communicating? Are you doing the work you want to be doing? Because when Mercury comes a call into the 10th house, if you're thinking about doing a different job, now could be the time to communicate that. If you're not okay with the way some communication is going in your work, now's a good time to do that. For example, today, I recently put up a website. The link's in the description. It's always there. I did a video. You can check that out up there. I do a lot of astrology and tarot work. On this website, I put up a consultation called Learn Your Astrology Consult. And I started to get the feeling that maybe that title wasn't clear on what the product was, what the service was. So this morning, I changed the title. I changed it to Learn Your Birth Chart Consult. That is a 10th house Mercury interaction. So if you are a Virgo rising sign, now is a really good time to look at that stuff. If you feel like there's things in your work that are not fully being communicated the way you want them to come across, now is the time to tend to that. Or now might be the time that you're just noticing, because all of these things too, it could be stuff you've already been thinking about. It could be new stuff coming up that you're like, oh shit, yeah, I should deal with that. You know, like it's both or either. So is there something in your work that you are realizing you need to communicate differently? Now's a good time for that. We are almost done. Next up is our Leo risings, which brings us to the 11th house of community and small groups. So earlier I mentioned in the 7th house that if someone is polyamorous and they have a polycule, their polycule as a whole, that would be here, right? This is groups of people, groups of friends, your choir, your church, your congregation, your workforce, right? So like if you work in an office of 10 people, me talking to Joan, don't know who Joan is, but me talking to Joan, that's a 7th house interaction. That's one-on-one. Me in a staff meeting, that's an 11th house interaction. That's a group, right? So it's this kind of group community stuff. If you are a Leo rising, you might be gearing up for some activism. Mercury moving through your 11th house could bring a time where you feel you really need to speak out on behalf of groups. You need to communicate how you think the world should be. The 11th house also has the signification of hopes on it. So you could be communicating your hopes, your dreams. It's how you communicate in your community. How is your community communicating? And does that line up with the way the community thinks? The thing with Mercury is it's all about aligning how you think and how you communicate. And it's bringing the two together, because there's what we say and then there's how it's received. And those can be two entirely different things. And that is what Mercury wants us to look at. What are we thinking? What are we saying? Do the two match? Does the energy we put out match the way our energy is being received? And that's wholly communication and thinking. It's a very brain heavy kind of time. So are you upset about something that's happening in your community and you're not talking about it? Is your community saying one thing and doing another, and that incongruence is causing difficulty, or it's causing you to rethink this community? It also could be a really good time to look at how you think about your spots in your community. How do you think about your communities? Are these communities you still want to be a part of? Are these groups that still feel right for you? Any questions, like with all of the arrest, any questions where you're asking about, where you're thinking and communicating about community and groups, that's the type of stuff that has probably been going on and could continue to be going on. And if it's not, it's something you can choose to look at and choose to work with. Which brings us to our final house, and this is the group I live in case you're curious. This is our Cancer rising signs. Our Cancer rising signs like me, have Gemini in the 12th house. And if you can't tell by my face, I'm not exactly pleased by this. The 12th house is called the house of self-undoing. It is the house of retreat. It is the house of mental health. I learned that signification from my astrologer. I don't recall where they learned it or thought of it, but I got that signification from them and I really like it. So your mental health and how you retreat and the isolation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. So, do you need more time alone? Are you communicating that? How's your mental health doing? Are you communicating that? This is a hard house. And the thing is, the stuff in here is very hard to reach. It is very hidden. Are you communicating how your mental health affects the other things in your life? This is a great place of boundaries. Are you communicating your boundaries? Have you thought about your boundaries recently? Do you need more? Do you need to let some go? Do you need new boundaries? I recently had to enact boundaries that I never thought I would, because my understanding of certain things that I used to be okay with has shifted, and I'm no longer okay with those things. And that means I had to give myself new boundaries. And it is not easy. It is hard. Mercury going through Gemini in the 12th house is all about what is it that's undoing you? And are you communicating it? And if not, should you be? And how are you thinking about it? Is your thinking undoing you? Is your communication undoing you? Who knows? There's all sorts of ways it can finagle up in there. But for me, the big standout is the mental health. Are you communicating what your mental state is? Are you honoring that? Are you thinking way too much about your mental state and that's making it worse? Are like anything in this category, and it's a hard one. And that takes us on our journey through the 12 houses. Now, this is an incredibly new style of video for my channel, so please, if you've watched it this far, please like it. I hope you liked it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification. Even if you didn't necessarily like it, but you're like, oh, I can see your point, but it's not my cup of tea. Can you please hit the bell or hit the thumbs up too? Because it really, really helps me. And if you got this far and you like and subscribe and all of this fun stuff and you want to, please leave a comment. It really helps. Let me know. You can share what house yours is if you want to. I'd love any feedback on if this made sense. Did I do a good job communicating my thoughts to you today? I would love to hear about that in the comments. If not, I just ask that you please be constructive and kind, because I'm a human being and I'm a big, soft and squishy one, and I have lots of emotions. So let me know in the comments down below, how did I do communicating my thoughts to you today on Mercury through the 12 houses? I hope you enjoyed. And also let me know if you like this, because I think I'd like to do more videos like this. In the description box, you can check out my website. This is work I do. I can sit down if you want to learn more about your Mercury specifically or your Gemini specifically. That is something we can work on together with your chart and with tarot even, because I combine the two sometimes. It's all fancy. So you can check out my website and see my services. You can also, if you are unsure what it is to look at on my website, you can send me an email at thecraftedwitchery@gmail.com. I'd be happy to help you out. But I'm going to let you go here because my throat hurts. And I'm sending you off with lots of love. Bye.